In today's video, we're going to go over the new feature under Tee Time Management, Files, and Tee Sheet Rules. In that program, as soon as you go into it, it's going to ask you for the rule type. There's two options in here. The first one is for summary, second one is for detail. The only difference between the two is summary is a rule for the entire tee sheet as a whole, whereas detail is a rule for individual tee times. So for the first part of this video, I'm going to go over all the different rules under summary and detail and how to set those up on your side. And then we'll take a look at how to apply those rules to either the entire tee sheet or individual tee times. So let's first take a look at the summary option. Under here, I already created a rule in my club, and that was for the maximum number of guests on Saturday mornings. But what the rule is in here is for the total players by golfer classification per tee sheet. So this is just my interpretation and my example. If you're setting this up for the first time, you can hit set up a new rule. I'm going to go into the one that I already have created. And so just input your code and your description for that rule. This is the rule that I'm implementing in my tee sheet. And then in the notes section, you can have even more details in there if you want a little bit more details just for yourself to know. And then to set that rule, we'll go into rule details. Look at that lookup screen, and there's the one rule that you can set for the entire tee sheet. So we'll click on that one. And if you haven't set this up before, just click enter through the line option. I have a rule already set up in there, so I'm going to click on that. And there's the description for my rule. What you can do is you can activate the booking threshold in effect, in which case you could say this restriction starts so many days ahead of time at a certain time. I'm going to leave that off for my example. But what I said is this restriction is in effect, and I'm maxing it out at 6 players per tee sheet for my guest golfer classification. So that's just one example that you can do on your side. You can modify this for however you'd like. And then if there is a restriction for times or certain days of the year, you can go up into advanced restrictions. And for my rule, I said there was a restriction in effect only on Saturdays, and that's from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. Going back to our main screen here, let's take a look at the 4 different rules that you can set under the detail option. Now the rules for this is the minimum number of players per booking, players that require specific golfer classification accompaniments, tee time restricted to specified golfer classifications, or a maximum number of players per tee time. So let's take a look at all 4 of those. First one we'll take a look at is the minimum number of players. Okay, so for that one, my example for this rule is no groups of 1 golfer will be allowed to book a tee time. So to set that, I went under Rule Details. I chose my rule right here. I entered in my line number. And then I said, for my restriction in effect, the minimum players per booking, I just set that as 2. Now, if you want, you can go into advanced restrictions and you can say what days of the week this applies to. But in terms of when this rule will take in effect, that will be the second part of this video when we attach this rule to individual tee times. The next rule in here is for accompaniments. So I'm going to go into that rule that I set up. And I said junior golfers can play on Saturday mornings only if they're accompanied by a gold member or a full golf member. So to set that rule on my side, I went under Rule Details. I looked up that rule code and went under my line number. And then what I said here is the restriction is in effect for my junior golfers or my junior golfer classification, and they can only play if they're accompanied by a gold member. Okay, now if it's for certain times, just like Saturday AM, you can go into advanced restrictions. And now you can say that the restriction is in effect for Saturdays. Now you'll notice that this section here is grayed out. I can't actually input a time in here, and that's because these detail rules that we're looking at right now, you would assign these to specific tee times on your tee sheet. So that we'll get into in the second half of this video. The next rule we'll take a look at is the tee time restricted to specific golfer classifications. So for that one, I said there's certain tee times on my tee sheet that are restricted to my full golf members only. So to set this, I went into Rule Details. I chose my rule, entered in my line number, and then down below you say the restriction is in effect for which golfer classification. I said my gold members. Okay, and once again, you can set this for certain days of the week, But in terms of what times it applies to, this is grayed out once again because you have to attach that rule to specific tee times. Now the last rule we'll take a look at here is for the maximum players per tee time. So I'll click into that one that I created. I'll go under the rule details, select my rule, and then select the line number. And then what I said for this one is the restriction is in effect for maximum number of players per tee time, and that is 2. So now that we've created all our rules, let's take a look at how to attach it to your tee sheet or your tee times. There's 2 ways to do this. You can go into your tee sheet templates, or if you want to attach this to specific days that are already open, you can go under tee sheet maintenance in the processing menu. We'll go under files for today's example under tee sheet templates. Choose your template that you want to attach this rule to. I'll say just my regular play tee time. And then if it's a rule that you want to attach for the entire tee sheet, you're going to go under the options button over here. And then you're going to attach that rule for the summary. So for me, I just have the one rule, and that's the maximum number of guests on Saturday mornings. And that's all you do for the summary option. If it's a rule for the detail rules, and that's for individual tee times, what you're going to do is you're going to go into the expert section right here. And now you should get this page with a column for tee sheet rule. So what you can do, if there's individual tee times that you want to set, you can do the lookup, and you can choose what rule you want to have in effect. I'm going to say maximum of 2 golfers per group, and I can assign that to individual tee times. Or what you can do is if there's multiple tee times you want to assign that rule to, you can use the Control or Shift buttons on your keyboard, and you can highlight multiple times, in which case you just right-click on that highlighted section, say Set Tee Sheet Rule to New Value, and choose the rule that you want to put into effect. For me, max golfers. And just like that, we've applied that rule to multiple tee times. So that's how you can attach it to your tee times or your tee sheet. Thanks for watching.